Listen closely, if you had been on the Titanic that night, chances are you would have already been dead before the ship even finished sinking. Not because of bad luck. Not because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. But because the entire system was designed to kill people like you. And that is what nobody tells you when they talk about the Titanic. Today we are going to reconstruct that night in April 1912 with real data, real names, and real decisions that determined who lived and who died. And I guarantee you that when you finish watching this video, you will never look at that romantic Hollywood story the same way again. If you are new here, welcome to a channel where history is told without sugarcoating. Hit that like button right now, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification because the algorithm needs your help to get this content to more people. It costs you nothing and it helps us more than you know. Ready? Let's sink together. The Titanic struck the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912. The ship sank completely at 2:20 a.m. on the 15th. 2 hours and 40 minutes. That is all the time there was between the collision and the bottom of the ocean. 2 hours and 40 minutes to decide who deserved to live. And it turns out that decision had already been practically made before the ship even left Southampton. The first brutal fact, your odds of surviving depended almost entirely on which class you were traveling in, and the differences were obscene. Among first-class passengers, 62% survived. In second class, 41%. In third class, where most of the immigrants were traveling, only 25% survived. 1 in 4. And among men in third class, the survival rate dropped to 16%. Almost nobody. Now ask yourself honestly, which class would you have been traveling in? Because here comes the part Hollywood never shows you. Third-class passengers did not just have cabins on the lower levels of the ship, closer to the water that was flooding in. They had physically restricted access to the upper decks. The doors connecting third-class areas to first and second class had locks on them. Some survivor testimonies describe physical barriers and staff members blocking their way. The official investigation that followed was deliberately vague on this point, but the numbers do not lie. They died in proportions that have no explanation without some level of controlled access. The second brutal fact, the lifeboats were a joke of legal engineering. The Titanic had capacity for 3,300 people between passengers and crew. It had lifeboats with capacity for 1,178 people. And that was already morally indefensible even if it was not legally so, because British maritime regulations from 1894 required a number of lifeboats based on the ship's tonnage, not the number of passengers on board. The Titanic complied with the law. The law was decades out of date and nobody had changed it because changing it was inconvenient for the shipping companies. But that is not the worst part. The worst part is that those lifeboats with capacity for 1,178 people were launched carrying an average of 60% of their capacity. The very first lifeboat launched had capacity for 65 people. It went into the water with 28 people in a boat that could carry 65, while hundreds were drowning in the water just meters away. The officer in charge decided not to fill it because he was afraid the boat would buckle under the weight while being lowered down the side of the ship. A fear that naval engineers later said was completely unfounded. The boats were designed to carry their full load. Before we continue with the next facts, I need to ask you something quickly. Write the word Titanic in the comments if this video is surprising you. It takes less than 3 seconds, and that small action tells the algorithm that this content is worth watching. Write it right now while I keep talking. The third brutal fact has to do with the cold, and this is where most people fail to understand what really happened. The water temperature that night was approximately -2 degrees Celsius. Salt water freezes at a lower temperature than fresh water. It was literally on the verge of freezing solid. In water at that temperature, the human body goes into thermal shock within 1 to 3 minutes. Loss of consciousness comes between 15 and 30 minutes. Death from hypothermia in under an hour. When the Titanic sank, there were more than 1,500 people in the water. Survivors in the lifeboats heard them screaming for almost 20 minutes. Then silence. That silence is probably the most emotionally documented moment by witnesses. Several described it as the most terrible sound they had ever heard in their lives, the exact moment when 1,500 voices went quiet. And the boats did not go back. Not immediately. Only one, lifeboat number 14, commanded by Officer Harold Lowe, returned to look for survivors, and it did so 45 minutes after the ship went down. It rescued 4 people alive. The rest were already dead. The fourth brutal fact, the radio operator on the nearest ship had gone to sleep. The Californian was approximately 20 nautical miles from the Titanic that night. Its own sailors saw signal rockets on the horizon and reported them to the captain. Captain Stanley Lord was woken up multiple times during the night with reports that a ship was firing white rockets in the distance. He decided to wait until dawn to investigate. The Californian's radio operator had shut down his equipment at 11:30 p.m., 10 minutes before the Titanic hit the iceberg. If he had been listening, the ship could have arrived in time to save hundreds. Later investigations concluded that Captain Lord probably did see the distress signals and chose not to act. He was never criminally prosecuted. I want to pause here because what comes next has to do with something beyond the Titanic. It has to do with how power works, how elites protect their interests even in a catastrophe, and how the patterns of wealth and survival we see in 1912 have roots going back thousands of years. There is an extraordinary ebook, available through the link in the description of this video, that traces exactly that line, the economic and philosophical secrets of the great ancient civilizations, from the Sumerians to the Romans, and how the elites of those cultures built systems to guarantee their own prosperity and survival generation after generation. This is not conspiracy theory. It is documented history seen from a perspective that textbooks never adopt. It costs just €10. Less than you spend on a night out. And by purchasing it you are not only investing in your own understanding of the world, but directly supporting this channel so we can keep bringing you this kind of content. The link is below in the description. Do not let it pass you by. The fifth brutal fact is about human decisions under pressure, and this is the most uncomfortable one of all because it forces us to ask questions we would rather not face. How do people behave when they know they are going to die? Survivor testimonies from the Titanic destroy almost every myth that cinema built around this story. There was real heroism, yes. Musicians who kept playing. Men who gave up their spot in the lifeboats. First-class passengers who helped others. But there was also panic. Shoving. Violence. One crew officer fired his pistol into the air to control the crowd trying to board a lifeboat. Another, according to later testimonies, shot himself before the ship went under. The official investigations softened many of these accounts because the White Star Line and the British government had an interest in keeping the public narrative orderly and heroic. The narrative of the calm, organized sinking, of English gentlemen stepping aside for the ladies, was in part a deliberate construction to protect reputations. The reality was more chaotic, more human, more terrifying. And it makes complete sense. 2 hours and 40 minutes is not enough time for anyone to process that they are about to die. The human brain simply is not equipped to accept that information that quickly. Many passengers did not understand the magnitude of what was happening until the ship began to visibly tilt, which happened quite late in the process. By then, many of the lifeboats had already been launched. The sixth brutal fact, the wealthy also died, but their deaths were the only ones that mattered publicly. John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world at the time, with a fortune equivalent to billions of dollars today, died that night. His body was recovered from the ocean. Benjamin Guggenheim died. Isidor Straus, co-founder of Macy's, died alongside his wife, who refused to board a lifeboat without him. These stories became legend. Their names are still remembered today. And the other 1,500? Most of their bodies were never recovered. Of those that were, many could not be identified. The immigrants traveling in third class, who were fleeing poverty in Ireland, Italy, Scandinavia, and Lebanon, who were heading to America looking for a different life, are for the most part just numbers in a statistic. There are no movies about them. No romantic novels. No statues. They died the way they had lived, invisible to the system that surrounded them. And this is not a historical accident. It is a pattern. Human civilizations have systematically organized for millennia who deserves to survive and who does not. The Titanic was not a tragic exception to the rules of the civilized world. It was a perfect demonstration of those rules working exactly as they were designed to work. Tell me in the comments, which of these 6 facts hit you the hardest? The locked gates in third class, the half-empty lifeboats, the captain who went to sleep, or something else? I love reading your responses and it helps me understand what kind of content resonates most with you. Comment right now. What the Titanic teaches us, beyond the immediate tragedy, is that survival has never been just a matter of luck or bravery. It has been, to a very large degree, a matter of position, where you stood in the social, economic, and physical structure when the crisis arrived. And that position is not improvised in the moment of disaster. It is built beforehand. It is inherited, cultivated, learned. The ancient civilizations that managed to prosper for centuries understood this with brutal clarity. They built systems of knowledge, accumulation, and transmission of power that their elites protected fiercely and that official history rarely explains honestly. That is why I am mentioning the ebook in the description one more time. Not because it is empty advertising, but because if this video made you think about how the world really works, that book is the logical next step. €10. Content that can change the way you understand money, power, and your place in the current system. And every purchase directly supports this channel. The link is below. The next time you watch a movie about the Titanic and see the protagonist running through dramatically lit corridors, remember what you know now. Remember lifeboat number 1, which had room for 40 people and was launched with 12. Remember the locked doors. Remember the radio operator asleep 20 miles away. Remember the 1,500 in the water and the silence that followed. The real story is not a romance. It is a lesson. And the lessons we do not learn, we repeat. See you in the next video. If you made it this far, hit the like button, leave your comment with which fact shook you the most, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. Until next time.